Welcome to this episode of Hampton Roads Business Live. My name is Rory Graham and I'm your host, and today we have the pleasure of having with us Susan Long-Molnar, who's the president of Managing Communications. Hello. How
Hello.
are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. This company, Managing Communications, has been around 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we start with you giving us an overview of what is that? What is Managing Communications?
Sure. I like to tell people the reason I came up with that name is because just about anything that you do to retain customers, get new customers, expand your operations, whatever you are doing, the critical piece is communications. Mm-hmm. So we do marketing and public relations and internal communications. Okay. Primarily at this point strategic. Planning and advising and that sort of, and training. But it's been just a wonderful 14 years so far.
Do you find that most business, this isn't on my list, but do you find that most business owners or a lot of business owners just don't plan or don't plan well enough? Or
Absolutely. What we find is there's a business plan to dust off. Mm-hmm. There's quite a bit of history. Maybe some of our clients have been in business for 40, 50 years. But over those years, there's always a need that's most immediate, and that kind of throws the plan out the door. Mm-hmm. And so we try to help them do strategic goals that match the business goals for marketing, objectives, timelines, and measurements. You've got to have a way to understand what those outcomes are. And research is one of the biggest parts that people just totally don't spend enough time on research.
And you find that possibly that bringing them into more of the technology of today, and you mentioned 40 or 50-year-old company that could be stuck in the old ways of doing things.
Absolutely.
You know, I've seen that. That's why I mentioned it.
And I could have gotten stuck, but Rory, I couldn't do that. You know, when I started the first business, advertising and PR, back in the 80s, mm-hmm. I literally had the art director at the drafting table, and we were creating these little tiny ads, you know, to fit budgets, and she was doing that with the wax and the whole 9 yards. Of course, we were fortunate in being able back then to have artists who still could do illustrators mm-hmm. and painters, like watercolor painting. So we were pretty advanced at the time in that area. But to bring that to today and the technology that's involved today is just incredible.
Open Photoshop now.
It's so much. It's just better. I'm not saying easier. You still have to really understand what you're trying to communicate and be able to express that both in the words and in the visuals. Yeah. But it's definitely a different time. And advertising itself is something that, you know, we don't even talk in those terms anymore. Mm-hmm. So. People from 40, 50 years ago may be saying to me, for example, well, we don't have a large advertising budget, and that's not a concern for me mm-hmm. because most of our businesses are either, you know, professional services or manufacturing. Of course, we don't have a lot of manufacturing right now in this region, or other kinds of services that require so much face-to-face contact and so much online marketing. And so that's where we really are today.
Right, I agree with that. Okay, so how did you get into this?
I was one of those...
I read your resume.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I know where you come from. Yes, okay. But I just figured I'd give you a chance
Sure.
to say.
Yeah, I got the degree in communications, and I was from Lexington, Kentucky. And my senior year, I was in the debate team and forensics team, and I had a passion for really communicating and having to do it in front of people. And so somewhere along the way, I guess being the first female in Kentucky to get a superior at the forensics tournaments for oratory, mm-hmm. I must have developed that, well, maybe I can do this kind of thing. Right. So I taught high school. And that was at Princess Anne High School for 10 years. and was very fortunate to be able not only to teach English and public speaking, but I got to teach the first visual language classes, which was theater and cameras and video production and making commercials. So one thing just led to another, and a lot of guts, and I've just been very fortunate with a good career. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you've certainly accomplished a lot.
Thank you.
And I wanted to congratulate you because you were listed this month in the Inside Leadership magazine under people making things happen in Hampton Roads. So that's no small accomplishment. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And so I had a question here. What leadership attributes or interests do you think have led you to where you are as a leader in Hampton Roads?
Well, I think it does carry back to those early days,
Right.
and having the being able to take the risk in front of people, not being afraid to communicate, and you've got to have some of that in a leadership role. I think that people need to be passionate about whatever it is they're going to be leading. So I'm one of those people who have had lots of passions and still do. Education, STEM education, for example, women entrepreneurs. And I just think that it takes having that ability to say, I'm not going to just be there, I'm going to be present. And being present really means entering into the dialogue, entering into the work of committees, and serving your community in whatever capacity seems to fit for you.
A lot of different things.
And I love it. And you know, I've always been that way, so I can't say that this is something that just occurred. But I think just being a risk taker, and I don't mean necessarily financial, but putting yourself out there and being able to stop working for the corporations that, for example, that I did, Cox and Centera and USAA in management, and saying, I'm going to do this because I've learned all this and I want to take it to small businesses and help them think big. But I think that's the role. And we have some real obligations in our Hampton Roads community to make things happen.
Right. Now, I know that you're making some transitions in your business because you've got big plans for the next 10 years or so. What are some of those?
Well, I love serving the small businesses and the kinds of clients that I have for PR and marketing and all those areas, but I've been so much not only strategic but also implementation. And I would like to have more time, and the only way I'm going to get more time is to move even more into creating strategies, training people in these companies so that they're able to do the LinkedIn social media, for example. We do a lot of that. Or be able to train their supervisors in communications so that they can better not only work with their employees, but get that big picture out into their markets. So I've been very successful in doing some of that, and I'm SWAM certified, so I want to do more in that area. And then you always say you're going to write books. I really want time to write. I love business writing.
How many guests have told me that?
Well, sometimes it takes something critical.
I want to write one too, actually. I am writing one. But you know.
Sometimes it takes something critical happening. My husband went through liver disease. He received he was a transplant liver. And so that was wonderful. It was a blessing, but I literally took notes in and out of so many different hospitals and situations for a good 2 years, and saw a real need for communications for caregivers, but not only that, tips for professionals. I saw a lot of good communications, but I also saw a lot of opportunities. So I really need to have time to do that.
That's a good
and
idea.
So that will start. Second half of 2016 will give me, the way I'm changing some of the things I'm doing will give me more time.
You're a speaker though too, right? So,
I do present.
Yeah. So you can do that for corporations, small companies, large companies.
Usually
anybody?
that's for associations, for specific industries. I have done that for years, and I would like to do more of it on the national circuit.
Now, for the training, is that for large or small companies or both?
It's actually for both. I have done some training for staffs that are as large as 10 or 12 people. For example, communicating effectively across generations shouldn't be just some presentation that you do. So I've been able to work like with a temporary agency, for example, in the past, that we had a lot of young millennials that were working in a company with the leadership being veterans, the traditionalist generation. And so we were able to really work through a lot of issues and resolve opportunities and come up with some processes that made them more effective to communicate internally. So I love doing that kind of work.
Okay. My last question that I had written out here is a big one, so let me just read it so I get it right the first time. As the 2016 Vice Chair of Communications of the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce, one of the many things you're involved in at Chamber of Commerce, as a volunteer leader, what do you think are the critical issues business owners face in Hampton Roads, which you hope to impact in some positive way? And I figure in that position, you are a pretty good position to know.
Exactly.
I have an opinion anyway.
I have an opinion.
Yeah.
And first I will say that the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce, I've been a member for decades, but we really are making significant rebranding and action changes and becoming the voice for proactive business, I think, in our region and supporting the regional issues that you mentioned. What comes to mind for me basically are two or three of the larger ones. One is we need to understand that manufacturing is not going to come back to Hampton Roads. It is a reality. We cannot do the things that are being done in other countries. However, that's not to say that as cheaply, and it's not only money, it's a lot of things. But what we can do is become a serious incubator community for this region in technology, and we've started down that road, but not just technology. We have to do a whole lot of different kinds of industries that go beyond manufacturing while we're still marketing to successfully at a regional level to large corporations. We have to have large corporations in this market as well.
Right.
And that's my second point, is we need to get very strong in marketing our region as a region, not, as this city over this city, but what are we to China? What are we to people in Chicago? What are we to people in Boston? And so that's another issue that I see really important.
Because we have a lot going for us with the port and all that.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of, this area has got a lot going for it.
So the way we communicate that is going to be really critical.
Right.
And third is something that, 1 minute we're behind and then we're doing better than North Carolina or better than another state around us. And that is twofold: our infrastructure and our education. And so we have to be able to stay ahead, to keep the millennials that we have, because we're going to seriously need them, and to keep the veterans. Our military bases, we know we will always struggle to stay here, to be still the largest naval base in the country. But we also have to take care of our veterans and make sure that we have a workforce that will bring those corporations here, that will help our existing businesses to expand, and to keep good people in this market. So I see those as the biggest issues.
Challenges. Yeah, big challenges. So.
But we'll do it.
All right. And positive, too. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So is there anything else before I close out? Is there anything else that I missed that I haven't asked you?
I appreciate your time.
Oh, okay.
And I think that it's just really important for people to realize my tagline needs to be that communications used to be soft skills. You used to think of it as soft skills. It is not. And I'm hoping that organizations, large and small, realize that you can't just fix those things internally. Sometimes you do need to outsource because it will bring new perspectives. People actually do train better sometimes when they have people from the outside. Right. But it all takes buy-in from management. Right. If I learned anything during those years at large corporations, it was how to communicate on teams, and I did some of it very well and some of it not so well. But being able to communicate internally what needs to be done and what employees need to know and when they need to know it, and keeping them informed sounds easy, but it's very strategic, and it needs to be strategic.
Well, yeah, I think you need to talk to them in a way they understand.
Exactly.
Or in their language.
Exactly.
And that's sometimes you don't know it's changed.
Right, right.
Or you're using things that they don't use anymore. Or terms, So anyway, yeah, I've experienced some of that myself. So, okay, so if you have a company and you have heard anything here that you think sounds really interesting, could use some help with your communication, or think maybe your company can communicate with your customers better, or with your employees better, or maybe with creating teams, and you would like to talk to Susan about it, you can reach her at Managing Communications at the information at the end of this video, and it's also on the bottom of this page. And so we wish you a great deal of success. You've had 14 years, and I wish you a great deal more. And,
thank you.
I thank you very much for coming in. I've known you for a while.
Yes.
And you certainly bring a lot to the community.
Thank you very much. It's nice to hear that from you, Rory.
All right, no problem. It's true. All right, thank you, and again, great deal of success to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.